The scorching Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty settlement of Cedar Creek, where tumbleweeds danced between weathered buildings and the promise of rain seemed as distant as heaven itself. Sam Bradley wiped the sweat from his weathered brow as he loaded the last of his meager supplies into his wagon outside Murphy's General Store. The 38-year-old rancher had been struggling to keep his small spread alive through the worst drought in living memory, watching his cattle die one by one as water holes dried up and grass turned to powder. His ranch lay 15 miles northwest of town, a modest collection of buildings that had seen better days. The barn roof leaked, the corral fences sagged, and his house bore the scars of years of financial hardship. Sam had inherited the land from his uncle 3 years ago, arriving from Ohio with dreams of prosperity that had slowly withered under the relentless desert Sunday. Now he counted every penny, rationed every meal, and wondered how much longer he could hold on. As he climbed onto his wagon seat, Sam noticed a small figure huddled in the shade of the general store's loading dock. At first glance, he assumed it was just another beggar or drifter seeking relief from the heat, but something about the way the figure sat perfectly still, almost invisible, caught his attention. Moving closer, he discovered a young Apache boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, with hollow cheeks and eyes that spoke of hunger that went beyond mere appetite. The child wore traditional buckskin clothing that had seen better days, and his dark hair hung in dusty strands around his thin face. Most telling of all, Sam could see the boy's ribs through his torn shirt, and his lips were cracked from dehydration. The sight stirred something deep in Sam's chest, a memory of his own childhood during the war, when Union soldiers had burned his family's farm and left them with nothing but each other and their faith. Without thinking, Sam reached into his wagon and pulled out the loaf of bread he'd just purchased his own meal for the next 2 days. He approached the boy slowly, remembering the tension that existed between settlers and Apache in this territory, where raids and reprisals had created a climate of fear and mistrust on both sides. "Hungry?" Sam asked simply, holding out the bread. The boy's dark eyes widened with surprise and wariness. He glanced around nervously, as if expecting a trap or trick, but the genuine kindness in Sam's weathered face seemed to convince him. With trembling hands, he accepted the bread and immediately began tearing off pieces, eating with the desperate urgency of someone who hadn't tasted food in days. Sam settled down in the shade beside the boy, ignoring the curious and disapproving stares from townspeople passing by. Cedar Creek wasn't known for its tolerance toward Apache, and most settlers would have seen feeding one as somewhere between foolish charity and outright treason. But Sam had learned during his years of struggle that hunger recognized no boundaries of race or tribe. It was a universal language that spoke to the basic human need for survival. "What's your name, son?" Sam asked gently, pulling out his canteen and offering the boy water. The child drank deeply before answering in careful English. "Aiyana means eternal blossom." He paused, studying Sam's face. "You are not afraid of Apache, boy?" Sam considered the question seriously. Should I be afraid of a hungry child? Aiyana's story emerged slowly, told in fragments between bites of bread and sips of water. His family had been part of a small band, living peacefully in the mountains, trying to avoid the conflicts that had torn the territory apart. 2 weeks ago, cavalry soldiers had attacked their camp without warning, killing most of the adults and scattering the survivors. Aiyana had escaped with his younger sister, but she had fallen ill and died 3 days ago. Since then, he had been wandering alone, afraid to approach the reservation, where his people were imprisoned, afraid to trust anyone. "I am last of my family," Aiyana said quietly, his young voice carrying a weight of sorrow that broke Sam's heart. "Have nowhere to go." Sam looked at this child who had lost everything, and saw in him something of his own story. When he'd come west, he'd been running from his own losses, the family farm destroyed, his parents dead, his dreams of a simple life in Ohio shattered by war and poverty. He'd sought redemption in the harsh beauty of the desert, hoping to build something new from the ashes of his old life. As the afternoon wore on, Sam found himself reluctant to leave the boy alone. The townspeople of Cedar Creek weren't particularly charitable toward white drifters, let alone Apache children. There were stories of Indian children being sold into slavery, or simply disappearing when no one was watching. The thought of abandoning Aiyana to such a fate sat like a stone in Sam's chest. "Listen," Sam said finally, making a decision that surprised even himself. "I've got a ranch outside town. It's not much, but there's food and shelter. You could stay for a while, at least until you figure out what you want to do." Aiyana's eyes filled with tears, the first emotion beyond wariness that Sam had seen from him. You would take Apache boy to your home? Why? Sam stood and dusted off his pants, extending a hand to help the boy up. Because everyone deserves a chance to start over. And because I've got more room than I need for just one person. The ride to Sam's ranch passed in comfortable silence, broken only by Aiyana's quiet observations about the landscape around them. The boy had an uncanny ability to read the desert, pointing out animal tracks in the dust, predicting where water might be found during the rainy season, identifying edible plants that Sam had never noticed despite years of living in this country. It became clear that Aiyana possessed knowledge that could be invaluable to a struggling rancher trying to survive in this harsh environment. Sam's ranch appeared in the distance like a mirage shimmering in the heat, a collection of sun-bleached buildings that spoke more of endurance than prosperity. The main house was a simple adobe structure with a covered porch that provided blessed shade. The barn leaned slightly to one side, its roof patched with whatever material Sam had been able to scrounge over the years. A windmill turned lazily in the constant breeze, drawing precious water from deep underground to fill a stock tank where Sam's surviving cattle gathered like pilgrims at a shrine. Aiyana surveyed the property with the analytical eye of someone who understood the challenges of desert survival. Water is good here, he observed, noting the green grass around the well. But buildings need work. Roof will not survive next storm season. Sam felt a flush of embarrassment at the boy's accurate assessment of his property's shortcomings. I know it's not much. Money's been tight, and I've had to choose between fixing things and buying feed for the cattle. Is honest work? Aiyana said seriously. My grandfather always said that a man's worth is measured not by what he has, but by how hard he tries to build something good. Inside the house, Sam showed Aiyana to the small spare room that had served as storage for the past year. They cleared out boxes of old equipment and made space for a bedroll and the few possessions Sam could spare. The boy moved through these preparations with quiet efficiency, accepting charity without shame but also without expectation of permanence. That evening, as they shared a simple meal of beans and cornbread by lamplight, Sam began to understand the complexity of his situation. Taking in an Apache child wasn't just an act of charity. It was a political statement, in a territory where racial tensions ran as hot as the desert Sunday. His neighbors would have opinions, and not all of them would be supportive. But as he watched Aiyana eat with careful, measured bites, still conserving food even when plenty was available, Sam knew he'd made the right choice. Tell me about your family, Sam said gently. What were they like? Aiyana's face grew soft with memory. My father was horse trainer, best in our band. Could make wild Mustang gentle as lamb. My mother, she knew all the plants, which ones heal, which ones harm, which ones make good food. Sister was learning to weave baskets like grandmother. He paused, staring into the flickering lamp flame. They were good people, did nothing to deserve what happened. The next morning brought the first test of their new arrangement when Sam's nearest neighbor, Jake Morrison, rode up to the house with suspicion written clearly across his sun-weathered face. Morrison was a hard man who'd lost his brother to an Apache raid 2 years earlier, and he made no secret of his feelings about Indians in general. Heard in town you picked up some Apache kid, Morrison said without dismounting, his hand resting casually on his rifle. That true, Sam? Sam stepped onto his porch, Aiyana visible behind him in the doorway. It's true. Boy was starving in town. Couldn't just leave him there. Morrison's eyes hardened as he took in Aiyana's appearance. You know what his people did to my family. You know what they're capable of. I know what this particular boy is capable of, Sam replied calmly. He's capable of being hungry, scared, and alone. He's capable of losing everyone he ever loved, just like we all are. The tension stretched between the two men like a taut wire ready to snap. Finally, Morrison spat into the dust and turned his horse away. You're making a mistake, Bradley. Mark my words, no good will come of this. After Morrison left, Sam found Aiyana sitting quietly on the back porch, staring out at the desert mountains where his people had once lived freely. The boy's shoulders carried a weight that seemed far too heavy for someone so young. He hates me because I am Apache, Aiyana said simply. This will bring you trouble. Sam sat down beside him, following the boy's gaze toward the distant peaks. Some folks carry hate like a disease. It eats them up from the inside. But that doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean I have to catch it. Over the following days, Sam discovered that Aiyana's presence brought unexpected benefits to his struggling operation. The boy had an intuitive understanding of animal behavior that helped Sam manage his small herd more effectively. He could predict weather changes hours before they arrived, spot sick cattle before symptoms became obvious, and identify the best grazing areas even in the drought-stricken landscape. More importantly, Aiyana's knowledge of desert survival began to transform how Sam approached ranching in this harsh environment. The boy showed him edible plants that could supplement their diet, techniques for conserving water during dry spells, and traditional methods for predicting when the seasonal rains might finally arrive. "Your people lived here for hundreds of years," Sam observed one evening as Aiyana demonstrated how to find water by reading the flight patterns of birds. "You understand this land in ways I never will." "Land is not owned," Aiyana replied, using a phrase Sam would hear many times in the coming weeks. "Land is borrowed from children not yet born, must treat with respect, or it will not provide." As summer deepened into its most brutal phase, Sam's ranch began to show signs of improvement that seemed almost miraculous to his neighbors. His cattle were healthier than those on surrounding properties, his water usage was more efficient, and his vegetable garden, planted according to Aiyana's traditional knowledge, thrived despite the drought. Word of these improvements spread through the small ranching community, creating a mixture of curiosity and resentment among people who were struggling to keep their own operations alive. Some neighbors began visiting under the pretense of borrowing tools or checking on Sam's welfare, but their real interest lay in observing the Apache boy who had apparently brought good fortune to the Bradley Ranch. Aiyana handled these encounters with remarkable maturity, remaining polite but reserved, speaking only when spoken to, and never volunteering information about his traditional knowledge. The boy's English continued to improve rapidly, and Sam discovered that Aiyana had a quick mind for learning new concepts. In the evenings, by lamplight, Sam began teaching him to read using his few books and old newspapers. In return, Aiyana shared stories from Apache tradition, tales of Coyote the Trickster, explanations of how the world came to be, and practical wisdom about living in harmony with the desert environment. "My grandfather always said that knowledge belongs to everyone," Aiyana explained one night as he helped Sam plan improvements to the ranch's water system. "What good is wisdom if it dies with the person who holds it?" But their peaceful routine was shattered on a scorching afternoon in late July when a cavalry patrol rode up to the ranch. Captain William Hayes, a career soldier with the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years fighting Apache in the desert, dismounted with the casual authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Afternoon, Mr. Bradley," Hayes said, touching the brim of his hat. "Heard you've got an Apache boy living here. Mind if we have a look at him?" Sam's blood ran cold, but he kept his voice steady. "What's this about, Captain?" "There's been reports of Apache raiders in the area. We're checking on all known Indians, making sure they're accounted for." Hayes's eyes were already scanning the property, looking for signs of Aiyana. "The boy's not in any trouble, but we need to verify his status." Aiyana appeared in the doorway of the house, his young face carefully composed despite the fear Sam could see in his dark eyes. The boy walked slowly toward the soldiers, his hands visible and non-threatening, moving with the careful dignity that Sam had come to associate with Apache behavior under stress. "This is Aiyana," Sam said, stepping slightly in front of the boy. "He's been helping me with the ranch. Good worker. No trouble to anyone." Captain Hayes studied Aiyana with the calculating gaze of a man trying to fit puzzle pieces together. "What band are you from, boy? Where's your family?" "Dead," Aiyana replied simply. "Soldiers killed them 2 moons ago. I am alone now." The captain's expression softened slightly. Perhaps he remembered other children orphaned by the ongoing conflicts in the territory. "You should be on the reservation with your people. It's safer there." "This is safe," Aiyana said, glancing toward Sam. "This man is good to me. I work for food and shelter. Harm no one." The standoff continued for several tense minutes as Captain Hayes weighed his options. Army regulations were clear about Apache children. They belonged on the reservation, where they could be monitored and educated in white ways. But Aiyana was clearly well cared for and posed no threat to anyone. More importantly, Sam Bradley was a respected member of the community, even if his current choice of companions raised eyebrows. "I'll need to make a report about this," Hayes said finally. "The boy can stay for now, but if there's any trouble at all, he goes to the reservation immediately." "Understood?" Sam nodded, relief flooding through him. "Understood, Captain. There won't be any trouble." After the soldiers left, Sam found Aiyana sitting by the well, staring into the water with an expression of profound sadness. The boy's hands trembled slightly, the first sign of fear he'd shown since arriving at the ranch. They will come back, Aiyana said quietly. Maybe next time. They will not listen to reasons. Maybe, Sam agreed, sitting down beside him. But maybe we'll have convinced enough people by then that you belong here. That evening, as they worked together to repair a section of corral fence that had been damaged by his restless cattle, Sam made a decision that would change both their lives. Aiyana, how would you feel about making this arrangement permanent? Not just until you figure out what to do next, but for real. You could be my son, if you wanted. The boy stopped working and stared at Sam with wide eyes. You would want Apache son? I'd want you as my son, Sam corrected gently. Apache, white or green with purple spots. Makes no difference to me. Tears flowed down Aiyana's dusty cheeks the first time Sam had seen him cry since that day outside the general store. But these were different tears. Born of hope rather than despair. I have no father, no mother, no family, Aiyana whispered. But I could learn to be good son to you. You already are, Sam said, pulling the boy into an embrace that felt as natural as breathing. You already are. The weeks that followed brought a new rhythm to their lives as they settled into their roles as father and son. Sam began teaching Aiyana more advanced ranching skills, while the boy continued sharing his traditional knowledge about desert survival. Their partnership became increasingly seamless, each anticipating the other's needs and contributing their unique strengths to their shared enterprise. Word of their unusual family arrangement spread throughout the territory, bringing visitors both friendly and hostile. Some neighbors began to accept Aiyana as simply Sam's boy, judging him by his character rather than his heritage. Others remained suspicious, waiting for any excuse to demand his removal to the reservation. Autumn brought relief from the scorching heat but also new challenges as Sam and Aiyana prepared for winter. Their ranch had prospered during the summer months, largely due to Aiyana's traditional knowledge and Sam's willingness to adopt Apache techniques for managing livestock in the desert. But prosperity brought attention, and not all of it was welcome. The first real test came in September when a group of Apache warriors appeared on the ridge overlooking Sam's property. They sat their horses like statues against the evening sky, watching the ranch through field glasses but making no move to approach. Sam counted at least 8 riders, armed with rifles and wearing the traditional war paint that indicated they were not simply hunting or traveling peacefully. Aiyana spotted them first, his keen eyes picking out details that Sam missed. My uncle, he said quietly, pointing toward the lead rider. My father's brother, Nalnish. He searches for survivors of our band. What do they want? Sam asked, his hand instinctively moving toward his rifle. To see if I am safe, Aiyana replied. To understand why I live with white man instead of joining them in the mountains. That night, Sam barely slept, expecting an attack that never came. When morning arrived, the warriors were gone, vanished like smoke into the vast desert. But their message had been clear. They knew where Aiyana was, and they were watching. The second test came a week later when Jake Morrison returned with 3 other ranchers, all armed and clearly agitated. They rode into Sam's yard like a posse seeking justice, their faces set with the grim determination of men who'd made an unpleasant decision. We've been talking, Sam, Morrison announced without dismounting. That Apache boy of yours has got to go. Yesterday, raiders hit the Henderson spread, stole 20 head of cattle and burned the main barn. Today, we find tracks leading toward your property. Sam felt his stomach drop, but he kept his voice steady. You're saying Aiyana was involved? I'm saying it's mighty suspicious, Morrison replied. Boy shows up. Suddenly there's Apache trouble in the area. You do the math. Aiyana appeared in the doorway of the house, his young face pale but composed. He'd obviously heard enough of the conversation to understand the accusations being made against him. I was here all day yesterday, Aiyana said clearly. Ask Sam. We fixed the well pump together, then mended fence until dark. The boy's telling the truth, Sam confirmed. He hasn't left this ranch in 2 weeks. But Morrison wasn't satisfied. Apache stick together. Maybe he didn't ride with them, but he could have passed information, told them about Henderson's security, his routines. The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence, ugly and poisonous. Sam felt his temper rising but forced himself to remain calm. Jake, you've known me for 3 years. Have I ever lied to you? No, Morrison admitted reluctantly. But you've never harbored an Apache before either. The confrontation escalated when one of Morrison's companions, a hot-headed young rancher named Billy Hutchins, decided to take matters into his own hands. Without warning, he dismounted and strode toward Aiyana with obvious hostile intent. "Maybe if we take the boy in for questioning, the raids will stop," Hutchins declared, reaching for Aiyana's arm. That's when Sam stepped between them, his own hand now resting on his revolver. "Nobody touches my son," he said quietly, but with unmistakable steel in his voice. The word son seemed to shock the assembled ranchers. They'd known about the boy living at Sam's ranch, but this was the first time any of them had heard Sam claim Aiyana as family. "Your son?" Morrison repeated incredulously. "Sam, he's Apache. You can't just adopt an Apache boy like he's a stray dog." "I can and I did," Sam replied firmly. "Aiyana is my son in every way that matters, and I'll defend him the same as I would any child of my blood." The standoff stretched for several tense minutes, weapons half drawn, tempers at the breaking point. Then Aiyana stepped forward with the calm dignity that seemed to be his natural response to crisis. "I will go," he said simply. "If my presence brings trouble to Sam, I will leave. Better that I suffer than that he loses his friends and neighbors." The quiet nobility of the boy's offer seemed to deflate some of the tension. Even Morrison looked uncomfortable with the idea of forcing a child to abandon the only home he'd known since losing his family. "Now hold on," Sam said firmly. "Nobody's going anywhere. These men have accusations but no proof. In America, we don't punish people based on suspicion and prejudice. What happened next would be talked about in the territory for years to come." As the group of ranchers prepared to leave their mission unsuccessful, but their hostility undiminished, a lone rider appeared on the horizon, approaching at a steady lope. As he drew closer, Sam recognized Captain Hayes, returning with what appeared to be important news. "Mr. Bradley," Hayes called out as he reined in his horse. "Glad I found you. We caught the raiders who hit the Henderson place. Turns out they were a rogue band from the reservation, 3 young men who'd run off to cause trouble. Your boy had nothing to do with it." The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison and his companion sat their horses like men who'd just watched their entire worldview crumble. Aiyana remained perfectly still, his dark eyes fixed on the ground, showing no satisfaction at being vindicated. "Furthermore," Hayes continued, "I've been authorized to make the boy's status official. As long as he remains in your custody and causes no trouble, he can stay. The territorial governor believes that successful integration like this should be encouraged." After the captain left, Morrison approached Sam with obvious reluctance. "I owe you an apology," he said gruffly. "Both of you. Let my prejudices cloud my judgment." "We all make mistakes," Sam replied diplomatically, though Aiyana could see the anger still burning in his adopted father's eyes. The vindication brought a period of relative peace to the Bradley ranch, but Sam could see that the recent events had taken a toll on Aiyana. The boy went about his daily chores with characteristic efficiency, but his natural joy had been dampened by the realization that his presence would always be viewed with suspicion by some members of the community. One evening in late October, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the desert mountains, Aiyana broached a subject that had obviously been weighing on his mind. "Sam," he said carefully, "maybe I should go to the reservation after all. Live with other Apache children, learn to be like white people. Would be easier for you." Sam felt his heart clench at the suggestion. Over the past months, Aiyana had become far more than just a ward or helper. He'd become the son Sam had never expected to have, the family he'd never known he needed. "Is that what you want?" Sam asked gently. "To live on the reservation?" Aiyana was quiet for a long time, considering his answer. "I want to belong somewhere," he said finally. "Here, I am Apache boy living with white man. On reservation, I would be Apache boy who lived with white man. Either way, I am between 2 worlds. Maybe that's not such a bad place to be," Sam suggested. "Maybe the world needs people who can stand between different peoples, help them understand each other." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, many horses, moving slowly and deliberately across the desert floor. Sam reached for his rifle, then stopped as he recognized the distinctive silhouettes of Apache warriors against the evening sky. But these riders carried no weapons visible, and they approached with the measured pace of a diplomatic mission rather than a war party. Naalnish, Aiyana's uncle, led the group of 12 warriors as they rode into Sam's yard and dismounted with ceremonial precision. The war chief was a man of perhaps 40 years, his weathered face bearing the accumulated wisdom and sorrow of his people's struggle for survival. He studied Sam with intelligent eyes that missed nothing, taking in the obvious prosperity of the ranch, the contentment visible in his nephew's bearing, the genuine respect that clearly existed between the white man and Apache boy. "I am Naalnish," he announced in carefully pronounced English. "Aiyana is son of my brother. I come to see how he lives, to understand why he chooses the white man's road." Sam stepped forward respectfully, remembering Aiyana's lessons about Apache customs. "I am Sam Bradley. Your nephew is welcome in my home for as long as he chooses to stay. He is my son now, but I know he will always be Apache." Naalnish nodded slowly, his gaze shifting to Aiyana. The boy approached his uncle with obvious emotion, speaking rapidly in Apache while gesturing toward the ranch buildings and the evidence of their successful partnership. Sam couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clearly one of affection and respect. After a long conversation in their native language, Naalnish turned back to Sam. "My nephew speaks well of you, says you treat him as family, teach him useful skills, show him respect. This is good. He's taught me more than I've taught him," Sam replied honestly. This ranch wouldn't exist without his knowledge and hard work. What happened over the next 3 days would become the stuff of legend throughout the territory. Naalnish and his warriors made camp near Sam's ranch and began what they called payment of debt. According to Apache tradition, when someone saved the life of a clan member, as Sam had done by rescuing Aiyana from starvation, the debt could only be repaid through significant action that demonstrated the depth of their gratitude. The warriors began their work before dawn on the first day, and Sam quickly realized that they intended to completely rebuild his ranch from the ground up. Using traditional Apache construction techniques adapted for modern needs, they began dismantling his old, deteriorating buildings and replacing them with structures that would stand for generations. The new barn rose like a cathedral in the desert, built with massive hand-hewn timbers and fitted together with joints that required no nails or modern hardware. The design incorporated innovative ventilation systems that would keep livestock cool during the brutal summer months, while providing perfect protection from winter storms. Every beam, every board, every stone was placed with the precision of craftsmen who understood that their work would serve as a monument to the friendship between their peoples. The main house received similar treatment, expanded and reinforced until it resembled a small fortress capable of withstanding anything the desert could deliver. Solar collectors made from polished metal provided hot water, while an ingenious system of channels and reservoirs captured and stored every precious drop of rainwater. The entire complex was designed to work in harmony with the harsh environment rather than fighting against it. Word of the construction project spread rapidly throughout the territory, drawing curious visitors from as far away as Tucson. Some came expecting to see evidence of Apache treachery or hidden military preparations. Instead, they found warriors and white ranchers working side by side, sharing techniques and knowledge that benefited everyone involved. Several neighboring ranchers quietly took notes on the innovative building methods, planning to incorporate similar features into their own properties. On the final day, as the warriors prepared to return to their mountain stronghold, Naalnish presented Sam with a gift that left the ranchers speechless. It was a traditional Apache war shield, decorated with symbols that told the story of Sam's rescue of Aiyana and his acceptance into the clan as an honorary member. "You are brother to Apache now," Naalnish explained solemnly. "Any of our people who see this shield will know you are friend, protector of our children, keeper of our trust." Sam accepted the shield with shaking hands, understanding the profound honor being bestowed upon him. In a territory where Apache and white settlers were more often enemies than friends, this recognition carried weight that went far beyond its material value. As the warriors mounted their horses for the journey home, Aiyana ran to his uncle for a final embrace. The conversation between them was brief but emotional, conducted in rapid Apache that Sam couldn't follow. When it ended, Naalnish placed both hands on his nephew's shoulders and spoke to him with obvious love and pride. "What did he say?" Sam asked after the warriors had disappeared into the desert. Aiyana wiped tears from his eyes before answering. "He said, I have chosen my path wisely, that I honor our family by building bridges between our peoples, and that our ancestors smile to see Apache and white man working together instead of fighting." Years later, travelers passing through the territory would point out the Bradley Ranch as an example of what was possible when people chose cooperation over conflict. The magnificent buildings constructed by Apache warriors still stood strong and beautiful, a testament to the power of gratitude and the bonds that could form between the most unlikely friends. Sam and Aiyana continued to work the ranch together, their partnership evolving as the boy grew into a man who embodied the best qualities of both cultures. Aiyana eventually married a young woman from the reservation, but they made their home at the ranch, raising children who grew up bilingual and bicultural, equally comfortable in both Apache and white society. The shield given by Naalnish hung in a place of honor above the fireplace, serving as a daily reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, kindness could bloom into something beautiful and lasting. And on quiet evenings, when the desert wind carried the scent of sage and distant rain, Sam would tell his grandchildren the story of how sharing a simple loaf of bread had transformed not just two lives, but an entire community's understanding of what it meant to be neighbors in the vast, unforgiving, and ultimately generous American West. The legacy lived on in the innovative building techniques that spread throughout the territory, in the children who grew up seeing Apache and white settlers as partners rather than enemies, and in the enduring proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can echo through generations, building bridges across the deepest divides and creating hope where none existed before.